is Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. It's Talking Giants brought to you by SeatGeek. My name is Justin Pennick, and I was joined by Nick Falato. Talked all about the Giants, talked about their draft class, basically from top to bottom, and did a new game. You're Brain Daboll. What are you doing with Jaxson Dart? How are you splitting up carries in the backfield? What's the plan for Mbow? How are you going to use Abdul like a Swiss Army knife? All that kind of stuff. So play from home too. Maybe type out your thoughts in a comment as you go. That's an idea. That's how you play the YouTube game. So you're Brain Daboll. How are you doing? How are you using all these toys that you got this year? So Nick Falato was awesome. Went about 50 minutes with him. But before I throw it to Nick Falato, I got to talk to you about Hall of Fame bets, because today's episode is brought to you by Hall of Fame bets. Are you tired of throwing money at parlays you just have a feeling about? We've been one leg away from hitting a massive parlay before, but a strikeout, unexpected bucket, or Hail Mary pass come in to ruin it. With Hall of Fame bets, that could be a thing of the past. You could finally have a leg up on Vegas by using historical data, matchup grades, leg correlation tools, and player performance insights. Hall of Fame bets has a 4.9 rating in the App Store and over 6,000 five-star reviews. It's safe to say the Hall of Fame app has already helped a lot of people win smarter with Hall of Fame bets. Once you've built your parlay, you can send it straight to your sportsbook with one click. No manual entry, no wasted time. The Hall of Fame app syncs automatically with most major sportsbook like DraftKings. On top of that, Hall of Fame isn't just about parlays. It's built for player props, game lines, totals, and more, giving you the tools to break down trends, spot value, and make smarter bets across every major market. For a limited time only, our listeners not only get a 7-day free trial, but also 50% off their first month when they use code GIANTS at checkout. Just download the Hall of Fame app on iOS or Android, enter code GIANTS, and you're all set. Here's Nick Falato. All right, welcome back to the show, and I want to welcome on Nick Falato of the Big Blue Banter podcast, and then also writer for Big Blue View, the man with the million jobs, the versatile Nick Falato, and the Nick Falato with the great head of hair. My friend, how are you doing? Thank you for joining me. And my first question to you is, give me your great hot take on Abdul and the number situation.
Okay, so thank you for that very kind intro, Justin. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you. I don't have any hot takes on this. Like I could care less. Like I couldn't care less.
And that's the normal person take. But I'll
Yes.
keep going.
Yes.
I have a take of what I want him to do.
Look, when he first came out and was like, "Oh yeah, LT," I was like, "All right, that's a bit presumptuous of you to kind of try to put LT on the spot like that." I'm glad LT and Phil Simms handled it the way they did. But this is somebody who's just looking to maybe possibly ingratiate himself with the fan base of the New York Giants, and what better way than to try to wear the number. But like, I don't know if it dawned on him that it was also, just crossing some bounds. Like, you got to earn that. Let's paint your own legacy, Abdul. And at this point, I think he's going to have to. I don't know what number he's going to wear. And quite honestly, up until about this point, I haven't put too much thought into it.
I've thought about this a lot.
Okay.
And I want him to continue to lean into it. Go up and down the retired number list.
Okay.
I mean, Ray Flaherty, we already got that, so we're not asking Malik Neighbors. You know what? Even ask Malik Neighbors. But go to number 4 and call up the family of Tuffy Lehmans. And I think this is just how insane this is. Like Tuffy Lehmans. Okay, let's ask for number 4. Then let's go to Mel Hine. We'll call Eli Manning and ask him. We already called Phil Simms. Then we'll call Wyatt Tittle and Ward Cuff. And then we'll call Kathy Lee Gifford and try for 16, and then keep going until we get to Michael Strahan at 92. Call everybody and let everybody get mad.
I think at this point, that's the only way to smooth this over and just make it a bit. Lean into it heavy too. Like, make it a whole thing. Like, even the Giants can get in on it, and they could do a whole segment where Abdul asks Eli Manning,
on the Eli Manning show.
On the Eli Manning show, exactly. Look, I got a real question for you, I got to ask you about this. Can I have number 10? I know it's been retired only for a little bit, but can I have that, do you think?
All right, we got to stop giving them ideas, because they will do this. No, but thank you for coming on. I thought of an idea in the shower this morning, and then you replied on Twitter saying thank you for thinking of me in the shower.
Yes, I'm very grateful for that.
And here's the idea. This is going to be the Your Brain Daboll show, and you can even play along at home. Your Brain Daboll. I'm going to give you scenarios, and very likely scenarios, and things that probably will happen. Conversations that they're having during the phase one, or when are we going to move on to phase two of the offseason as they're getting in there in the spring, and then eventually they're going to come on board for the summer. Conversations that they're having in the Giants building, and not even thinking of so Nick Falato, I'm calling you your Brian Daboll, not even necessarily what you think Brian Daboll will do, but hey, you're Brian Daboll, you're the head coach of the Giants. What are you going to do in this situation? And we're going to start off with the quarterback room. And we're going to start off with Jaxson Dart. So, Nick Falato, you're Brian Daboll. You have a 4-quarterback room that are all significant names. How are you navigating, preparing Jaxson Dart for the future, while also getting Russell Wilson and even Jameis Winston ready to start games for you? How are you kind of splitting up those reps, and how are you even attacking the summer and the preseason?
First off, I love the idea of what Brian Daboll said he was going to do, where he's going to just throw him to the fire randomly throughout training camp, maybe a couple snaps here in practice, couple snaps there. I do really appreciate that idea. I am trying to win football games in the now. I'm not going to steal too many snaps away from Russell Wilson until I believe Jaxson Dart is fully ready. Jaxson Dart will be working with the second team with Jameis Winston once he gets to that point. It's difficult for me. I'm speaking. It's a lot of conjecture here. I don't know how ready Jaxson Dart is. But let's say that he's progressing mildly and coming along and learning the offense, and we're in the beginning parts of training camp. That's when he starts eating into those second team reps, provided that he's actually there mentally and everything. And then maybe eventually he'll earn a couple of those sprinkle first team reps. You sprinkle it here, you sprinkle it there, and that could carry out through the season. But I honestly, in today's NFL with the CBA and how limited and how limited the snaps are and how valuable the snaps are, I'm still trying to win games in the now. I don't want to take too much away from Russell Wilson and his ability to develop a rapport with the New York Giants and their receivers. So I would have to be quite confident in Jaxson Dart's ability to start year one for him to start to earn significant or even some of those first team reps. I want to build up to that point. So it would be a slow progression into that. And then once the season hits and Russell Wilson starts struggling, that's where we can really start having other conversations about putting Jaxson Dart in that position. I don't want to put Dart in that position too early. And the Giants have time to put Dart in that position with the contracts of Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. So let's bring him along slowly, because once he's there and once we brought him along, we're not going backwards, So right. I want to be very judicious about how we put Dart into the position to start earning first team reps, because once he starts earning them in mass consistently, he's going to be a starting quarterback in the New York Football Giants.
Yeah, this is a unique situation, especially what they're going to have on their plates for the spring, and then especially when we start really paying attention to the practices in training camp in the summer. It was Shane and Daboll when they were speaking together. I forget whether it was before the draft or after the draft, and they kind of mentioned Tommy DeVito is going to kind of lead the room for a hot second here. And it's like, oh, okay, the guy that's been in the system the last couple of years, Tommy DeVito, he's the fourth guy. Usually I feel like the majority of NFL teams, I guess if you're besides the Cleveland Browns, the majority of the NFL teams, the fourth guy on the roster is the Tim Boyle likes. Like, all right, just guys that you're, they're here for camp, they're here for the summer, and you kind of just throw them away. The majority of NFL fans don't know who the number 4 quarterback is on a team, whereas the New York Football Giants, we are very familiar with all 4 of these guys, and it's going to be just a very interesting dynamic, because you mentioned it with the new CBA. It's not even new anymore, but the CBA that's post 2011, and where it just eliminated so much practice time, where how are you going to balance, and how is Brian Daboll even going to balance the practice time and who gets what reps and who gets what snaps? And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, it was Daniel Jones's first year with Daboll in 2022. Oh, I remember. They did the opposite of what Daboll just said that he's going to do with Dart, whereas it was Tyrod Taylor. Everybody went up, and I remember this because everybody went up in arms. Was like, Tyrod just got two first team snaps in a training camp practice in August. And I think that was one of those things where I think it eventually comes out with Tyler Dunn, like, oh, well, Daboll just did that to test how Daniel Jones would react. And now we may see the opposite of what's going to happen when Jaxson Dart's thrown in there, with the first team, probably sometime in the middle of August. So
I love that you brought that up, because remember, Daniel Jones struggled because Wink Martindale was throwing the bag at
2022 camp was off. I'm like, this offense is going to be horrible. It's going to be putrid.
I know. And they put Daniel Jones's feet to the fire, and he responded well once the season rolled around for what they asked him to do in Brian Daboll system. But just like if we focus on this quarterback room, I'm trying to make a connection to another NFL franchise, another NFL team in recent memory who has constructed a quarterback room like this. Like even just through the lens of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll and their regime, like they came in, they declined the 5th-year option of Daniel Jones, a first-round top 10 overall pick from the previous regime. They declined his 5th-year option, allowed him to ride it out, signed Tyrod Taylor. Daniel Jones leads him to a playoff victory. They give him the extension. It doesn't work out the next year. He tears his ACL. He comes back again. They don't really pour many assets into the room. And then they have this undrafted kid who comes in, wins them some games. And now that undrafted kid, just from 2 years ago, is the leader in the room where there's Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and a first-round pick at quarterback. It just seems like the way they got to this point is truly unique. And I don't know what other NFL team has taken this path with the most important position group in the entire sport.
It's bizarre, but we're in it, man. We're in it. I want to get back to Dart. So this could even go back to, hey, your pre-draft thoughts or your draft thoughts, especially now that they drafted him and a lot of the stuff that you guys are talking about on Big Blue Banter. In your opinion, what's Jaxson Dart's ideal timeline with the Giants? And I think even more importantly, what do you think his biggest hurdle, like the biggest hurdle he needs to climb in his transition to the NFL? What is that?
The biggest hurdle that he would have to climb, I think, is just playing consistently and adapting to the speed of the NFL and the lack of space. Because that's what Lane Kiffin's offense really looked to exploit, is space on the field, because you have those wide hashes and the lack of high-end athletes playing in college football. Now, they're good athletes, but the NFL, you're talking about creme de la creme. These are the best athletes in the world playing. So that the space is already limited. And now the athletes are going to close width at such a quicker, more explosive rate that you just need to be so much faster with your processing and your anticipation. Now, the thing is, Jaxson Dart showed that in college. It's not necessarily something that is a blight or something that did not come up on film. You see him throw with anticipation. So I'm not overly worried about that. But that combined with him taking massive hits in the pocket, him taking hits because he's not getting down, all of that together could weigh on an individual. It seems like this kid comports himself well, has a good head on his shoulders, and it shouldn't be too much of an issue with the tutelage of Brian Daboll. But either way, so many things can go wrong when it comes to playing the quarterback position. So it's kind of just the adjustment and the transition into the NFL game. We can say and project and prognosticate, yeah, he can do this because we saw it, but it doesn't mean that it's actually going to translate that way, as you know, Justin. So that's my, I think, main thing is just, can you transition to the speed and the physicality of this game 17 games in? Now, to your first question, when do I want to see him, or when do I think he can be available? I hope this year goes well with Russell Wilson, and then maybe even towards the end of this. I hope this year goes well with Russell, and then we see Jaxson Dart next year. But Russell Wilson could get injured, and then you have Jaxson. So I want. We
don't live in an ideal world if we root for this football team. There's never the ideal world.
Right?
Tommy DeVito has started multiple games the last 2 years. That's not the ideal world that you want to live in.
You're 100% right. It's not the ideal world. But Jaxson Dart, I'd like to see him next season once he's fully acclimated. But if it happens at the end of this season because the Giants aren't as good as, then that's fine too. Like the Patrick Mahomes type of arc when he was playing behind Alex Smith. And Lamar Jackson behind Joe Flacco, something like that.
I think the trends of the NFL, like it shows, even look at the Jordan Love example. That's a unique situation where you have a Hall of Famer and Aaron Rodgers playing in front of you. But I mean, you just mentioned Patrick Mahomes and some of the other guys that have sat for a year, close to a year, or even more than a year. And then they come in and they just seem to have a better grasp of things. Versus, I think a couple years ago, when I was even doing this in 2019 and the Giants drafted Jones, it's like I was of the opinion I want to see him as soon as possible. I want these guys out there. You need to take advantage of the rookie contract. You have this 4 to 5 year window where the money's good and you can build around him. Get him out there ASAP. And I think as time has gone on, even Lamar's an example too, a guy that you kind of bring along slowly and doesn't play right away. do you think for like Jaxson Dart's issues that you just mentioned, like adjusting to the speed of the game, like I think his biggest thing is evolving and adjusting to things that aren't clean, because things are going to get harder in the NFL. And I thought he thrived off of cleanliness at Ole Miss, where things are not going to be clean in the NFL. There's windows that are tighter. There's just, you're going to throw to more of a complete route tree with wide receivers and things like that. So do you think that can be done? And I think the biggest defense of Jaxson Dart right now, ironically enough, is that why I have the most faith is that he isn't going to play right away. Like, that's what gives me the most optimism about his future, is that he's not going to play right away. And I don't know if that's a great spot that you want to be in. So do you think, in terms of the struggles that you said, the things that he needs to get better at, do you think that's something that can be done while not playing, basically?
I think it's easier to do that when you're playing, but can you learn things in the classroom and practice reps that aren't necessarily live because you're not taking hits? Yes, I absolutely believe you can learn there. But then once you get out there, you might make some mistakes. How are you going to respond to those mistakes? Are you going to let those mistakes bring you down? There's really nothing about Dart's personality, and I say this like I know the guy, right? But everything that we've seen, everything that we've been exposed to, there's nothing about the way he carries himself that would suggest to me that he's going to get in his head and he's going to, crumble under the pressure. He seems to be a, 21-year-old kid who carries himself well. So I'm hoping that, yes, he might make those early mistakes, as every young quarterback does, but then he learns from it. And the primary reason why I support this pick, it's not because I'm optimistic that Jaxson Dart is going to be he's going to reach his potential. I'm not saying I'm pessimistic either. It's the sheer fact that John Mara, the owner of the New York Giants, made the decision to bring back Joe Schoen and Brain Daboll. And now we finally got Brain Daboll, the guy that he hand selected. This is the fourth draft now? That has not happened. They've been gone through this whole Daniel Jones experiment, whether you have this opinion of it or that opinion of it. It was not a great experiment to undergo. And we've been in quarterback purgatory, and we might remain in quarterback purgatory, but at least Jaxson Dart represents a path to a higher realm at this point, a more prosperous future. He's at least the impetus to that, if Brain Daboll is the quarterback coach that we think he could be. So that's why I like this Jaxson Dart selection. And he also showed enough traits in college, enough physical arm talent, enough moxie, enough toughness as a runner, athletic ability, all these things, that I can see a path to where this kid could be a good to very good quarterback in the National Football League. Doesn't mean it will happen, but there's certainly a path there. So that's why I personally like supported the acquisition and the trade up to get him.
Yeah. You mentioned moxie and you mentioned some, personality traits too. And I agree with you with Jaxson Dart. And to kind of pivot away from him, your guy Cam Skattebo, you and Dan went on and on about Cam Skattebo. So here's the next your Brain Daboll exercise. Your Brain Daboll.
Okay.
How are you splitting up carries in this backfield this year? Is Cam Skattebo ready to get the majority of the carries from day one?
I wouldn't say he's ready to get the majority of carries from day one. If he had to, he could, right? But the Giants have options. So we got to look at it like I'm looking at it from that lens. When you have Tracy Jr., then I'm going to lean on him as the veteran, which is odd to say. And I wouldn't even be shocked if Devin Singletary factors into this, but I'm going to put him aside at the moment. And I really want this to be a 1-2 punch where you have Tracy Jr. and you have Cam Skattebo. Cam Skattebo, a little bit more of a physical runner, a little bit more of a difficult tackle when you have him framed up in the alley because of the contact balance and the fact that the guy never has a wasted step. He has some of the most efficient feet in this entire draft class, right? Like, he knows where he's going. He's decisive on where he's going. And then he goes there, and then he can make you miss. And he has eyes in the back of his head. So I love that about him. But with Tracy Jr., I don't even like to view this. Is this going to be a 1A or 1B? Let's just use them. And I would be okay with them riding the hot hand and going with that approach. But Cam Skattebo is the rookie in this situation, so I would probably give Tracy Jr. the first shot to be the starter. But at the end of the day, I want to get them about the equal to same amount of touches. But if one is outperforming the other, you go with that one. Another aspect of this, too, both of these guys kind of have fumbling issues. We saw it crop up last year with Tracy Jr. and Cam Skattebo. I think he fumbled 4 times last year. 4 times the year previous. I think he had 10 total fumbles, if I'm not mistaken, throughout his college career. So that could be something that gets his ass on the bench. Other than that, and the fact that he is almost comically, I don't want to say bad because that's mean, but watching him in pass protection was comical because he just tries to like eliminate people by throwing his body at them, but it wasn't effective, right? So I would like to see that part and that element of his game round into form, because if that happens, he could be a 3-down back, but that would come at the expense of Tracy Jr. or a lot of pony package, which we've seen the Giants have success in previous years. That's 2 running backs out there, 21 personnel.
Oh, Matt Breida and Saquon Barkley. Bring it back.
I'd support it with these two. Absolutely.
Oh, and Jaxson Dart.
Right?
That's exciting. Oh.
Get some.
Put something else on my brain that wasn't there.
Put option football out there, man. Like have like we've seen Daboll do all these like weird creative packages, or Kafka, whichever one, in the red zone, and they've scored like in 2022. They scored on a lot of option plays where it was go into the zone read, roll to our right, guy in the flat, corner route, high, low, or I'm going to take him my legs. And sometimes it was like a 3-versus-1 on a cornerback if there was a tight defensive formation. So it's like the Giants were just taking money from a lot of these defensive teams. If you go back to that Chicago Bears game, right? If you go back to the Carolina Panthers game back in 2022, you saw a lot of that. Now with Dart, Tyrone Tracy, Cam Skattebo, in certain formations, I'm not saying we're going to become like a triple option team, but you can have option type of plays that are very creative where we're like on Monday morning, we're like, yo, did you see that? Oh, that's what I hope for, man.
All right, before we keep talking with Nick Falato, we got to talk about DraftKings. They say baseball is a marathon, not a sprint, and that's great news for us because there are so many games to bet on. Don't miss a second of the action with our partners at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, all new customers who bet $5 on anything, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you use our code JMFootball. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use code JMFootball, bet $5 on any wager, get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code JMFootball only at the DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. My main ask of Daboll when it comes to the running game this year, and I think Skattebo is going to be part of. I mean, we've thrown around the word identity to describe this Giants draft class, but I hope that Skattebo is part of the let's help the Giants find an identity in the run game, because there were certain games last year we're playing the Cowboys and it's a disgrace to walk out of that game and not be able to dominate the Cowboys running the ball. Same thing with the Bengals, playing them on Sunday Night Football, and the Giants can't run the ball. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with those bad run defenses are also stacking the box, and the Giants can't throw the ball down the field. So I think the pass game is ultimately something that can help you set something up like that. But I think not being able to find an identity in the run game where you run the ball so well against a team like the Commanders, and then you turn around the next week and you can't run the ball at all. So I hope that Skattebo is part of that process of Brain Daboll, even schematically, yes, finding that identity in the run game in terms of what do we want to accomplish and what kind of team do we want to be. Also, especially considering the strengths or even the weaknesses of the offensive line. And
we've seen so look, you think of Kyle Shanahan, you think of Sean McVay, you think of the outside zone, the stretch zone, and their rushing attack out of 11 personnel for Sean McVay, a little bit more than Shanahan, who focuses a lot more on like 21 and 12 personnel, bigger, heavier, heftier packages. Brain Daboll has used a lot of different types of rushing styles since he was the head coach here. We saw back in 2022, the Giants ran a lot of power gap, a lot of counter. Last year, we saw a lot of duo. There were still some outside zones, still saw, backside guard pull. We still saw the power gap. Now with Skattebo and Tyrone Tracy, I just think you can get creative with how you call certain plays against certain defensive looks with these two running backs, with these two rushing styles as well. Because Cam Skattebo's got some good vision too. Like he can operate in zone. He's not just a power gap type of guy. So I'm excited to witness how Brain Daboll is going to call the rushing attack, and if he's going to have any other creative layers that we haven't maybe seen on a consistent level yet.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, and I guess it depends on how you look at it, we know continuity is a good thing, but maybe for this offensive line, is it the best thing? The Giants are returning, as of now, the 5 starters we had at offensive line last year. Now, this is without seeing Marcus Mbow at guard. We'll talk about him. Dare I say Evan Neal? Won't even bring him up now. We got to see him at camp. Well, we'll talk about Mbow in a minute, but as of right now, they're returning the same 5. And also, they're returning 10 out of the 11 starters on offense in a year where the offense ranked towards the bottom of the league. So really, I guess, lean a little bit more towards the offensive line. Everybody likes the Giants offseason, made upgrades on defense. You made upgrades at the quarterback room, but the offensive line, one of the areas in which they're not particularly very strong at. But I know you guys at Big Blue Banter, you guys broke down the pre-Andrew Thomas injury Giants offensive line, and that particularly their pass blocking offense was some of the best that we've seen in a decade. So talk to me about that. Giants returning their starting five on offensive line, at least as of right now.
Yeah, I'm excited about them returning it. Like, the Giants get a really bad rep, rightfully so, for being a very putrid offensive line because they have not been a good offensive line over the last decade or so. But last year, sans week one, which was tough, and that was mostly because they were just blitzing the Giants like crazy and coming from a bunch of different angles. Giants were pretty solid up until that Andrew Thomas injury. And even after the Andrew Thomas injury, we've seen Andrew Thomas go down in previous years, Justin, and the team just folded, fell apart. Right. It wasn't really like that. They kicked Jermaine Illuminor over to the left side. They bring in Chris Hubbard and Evan Neal, and they're cycling in a bunch of guys, right? It wasn't great, but it was still better than the catastrophically inept offensive lines we've seen in the past. And I think one reason for that is Greg Van Roten's presence, along with John Runyon's presence, just being in the interior to assist the young center that is John Michael Schmitz. And also Evan Neal, I think, probably put his best tape out there last year at right tackle. Now, that's a low bar. It's not something that is, hey, Evan Neal's guys. No, there's a reason why he's getting kicked inside right now. But it still, I thought, was better than what we've seen from Evan Neal in previous years, the previous iterations of Evan Neal that have disappointed. So overall, I look at the offensive line and I'm saying, is it a top 10 unit? No. Is it a bottom 25 unit? No. I think it's probably around the 20 to 15 range with some upside and possibly I would say a top 5 left tackle in the National Football League. You can argue top 3. I think top 5 is safe. Jermaine Illuminor, that is a good quality starter. John Runyon is an average starter to maybe slightly above average, probably more towards average. Same with Greg Van Roten, average. And then John Michael Schmitz, you need to get more out of. A little bit below average. So all in all, this is the best offensive line situation the Giants have had since I've been covering the team easily. So, I mean, I'm fine with this being the unit. I just hope we see development from John Michael Schmitz, because if we don't, that's like, it's a second round pick that we burned, and now what's our plan there? You can move Greg Van Roten over to center and then put Evan Neal at right guard. Marcus Mbow can factor into this. Obviously, he could possibly play at center, which I know he was doing, I think, a little bit, at the Senior Bowl? So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the offensive line. I don't think it's as dire of a situation as it's been in the past, but it still could improve, and that's why I'm glad they drafted someone like Marcus Mbow.
Before we get to Mbow, like after the draft, especially because they didn't make any upgrades at offensive line this offseason or really in the draft. Like I hope Mbow's somebody that they bring along. Again, we'll talk about him. But now I'm sitting here and I'm saying once again, Andrew Thomas is the most important player on this Giants roster. Do you think that is a stretch? I mean, we mentioned last year, Illuminor moved over to the left side and they looked okay, but I still am sitting here and I'm like, before that Seattle game and around that time, despite the Giants' points per drive not being that great, they were moving the ball. Yeah. Like at a top 10 rate. Like their yards per drive was top 10, and it's like, we need to finish, and we know how bad they were in the red zone last year. So now heading into this year, I know all the upgrades we had. I know, all the defensive upgrades and the secondary, Russell Wilson, Malik Neighbors. I am still sitting here, and heading into 2025, Andrew Thomas is the most important player on the team. True or false?
I think it's an interesting conversation. I might lean false, although I can easily consider it being true. I'm just trying to process this right now. Look, the Giants, say Andrew Thomas does get hurt, they at least have some veterans back there to possibly play right tackle along with Marcus Mbow if Jermaine Illuminor kicks over to the left side again. They brought in James Hudson III. I wasn't particularly high on him, but I know he was a very good athlete who used to play tight end, and he has quick feet. And they also bring in Stone Forsythe, who is opposite of James Hudson III. He's just a massive, like 6'8", 330-pound guy. But those two veteran options you have now at right tackle, and they would be in this system the entire time. And it's not like they're just bringing Chris Hubbard off Pittsburgh's practice squad in. You know what I'm saying? So they have those options. And then you have the Marcus Mbow option where it's like, if he is ready, and I know he has 32.5-inch arms, but he could play right tackle as well. So you have options if something were to happen to Andrew. The other name is Dexter Lawrence. If something were to happen to Dexter Lawrence, you brought in Jeremiah Ledbetter. You brought in Roy Robertson Harris. You have options there, but those options are tough. And this defense, we saw it last year. Once he went down, the defense had to change. There was a lot more. We just need to even the math out in the box. We need to get +1 in the box to stop the run. We can't run these two high shells that we like to run. And it foundationally changed what Shane Bowen wanted to do defensively. So for me, if Dexter Lawrence were to go down, I think we might have to do that again. I like Darius Alexander a lot, but Dexter Lawrence with the pass, like not even, I didn't even talk about the pass rush. Like the Giants pass rush, they could have the best pass rush in the National Football League easily with Dexter Lawrence there. But with him not there, then you're going to have to change your run defense looks. And I think it just hamstrings Shane Bowen. So I think I might lean Dexter Lawrence, but I think this is a good thought exercise. That could be an entire podcast.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I want to talk about Mbow. I want to talk about Marcus Mbow. You're Brian Daboll, Nick Falato. We just drafted this athletic, wild, aggressive lineman in Marcus Mbow. He insisted down at the Senior Bowl when we talked to him. He thinks he can play tackle in the NFL. That's the first thing that he said. I want to play tackle in the NFL. I think I can do it. Despite evaluators saying that he's probably going to slide into the interior or even center, some people are speculating. So what's your plan for Mbow and his development? Joe Shane and Brian Daboll recently said he's going to start at tackle, start at tackle, the position, not necessarily be the starter. Yeah. What's your plan for Mbow and his development?
That's my plan as well. I agree. You start him off at right tackle, allow him to lose that job. We don't have the New York Giants a long-term plan at right tackle. Jermaine Illuminor is going to be a free agent after next season. And I get it. 32.5-inch arms, it gives me some pause. But Marcus Mbow's smart. He's got feather feet. He's light on his feet. He's good at framing, and he understands angles. And if you're going to overcome your physical limitations when it comes to being 32.5-inch arms and 303 pounds, is also a little bit concerning for me. But one way to overcome that is to be a smart tackle who is always where he needs to be. So I'm willing, especially with this kid, with his temperament and with his skill set, to allow him to have an opportunity while we have veterans starting to be trained at right tackle under Carmen Bracillo to see if we actually have a possible right tackle solution for the future here. And we can allow Jermaine Illuminor to move on after this season. And if that's not the case, we'll handle it. And we have a very good lineman who could possibly play guard or center. We'll see about all that. But I'd be remiss if I did not at least give him the opportunity to succeed at right tackle in the National Football League, despite those limitations.
You know, and sometimes, like, I've gotten frustrated over the years with the whole cross-training thing. It's like, you know, we tried doing it with the Azudu. It's like, we're wasting valuable reps and valuable time in practice when we could be practice the position that you're going to play. So is Mbow an exception this year? Like, when he slides to the interior, maybe a week or 2 weeks into camp, or maybe even a little bit sooner, if he alternates where he is that a player and an example where we're fine with that cross-training?
I think maybe initially, but for me, I don't even really want to cross-train him right now. I want to just have him get all of those maybe second-team snaps at right tackle. I don't know if he will with Hudson and Stone Forsythe there, but I would rather him just focus on playing tackle until we're unconfident with his ability to play tackle, and that's where he wouldn't be a cross-train. It'd be like a position switch over to guard. Because I get why we're concerned about his ability to play tackle, but man, when you watch him out on an island, how smooth is this guy, man? Like just getting in front of people, mirroring them. It's the antithesis of Evan Neal, right? When it comes to just like the footwork and how light he is. But we need to ensure that he actually has the anchor to be able to set his feet in place against those wide rushers who are looking to bull rush him because he is a little bit light in the pants. But I'm willing to at least give him the opportunity.
Yeah, and especially the move to the interior, what concerns me the most is I think as a run blocker at tackle, I think you see he has way more of a better understanding of angles as opposed to I'm just going to kick this guy's ass and drive him out of the way. And I think that's fine. We're 302 pounds. If our plan is to just slide him to the interior, and we're playing against guys that are 330, 340 pounds, at sometimes a defensive tackle, I'd rather go up against guys that are 260 pounds and are fast because I know that I got a tackle that's fast and as quick as lightning too and has really quick feet. So I think I'm with you. We're watching him initially and then also just hearing what this guy's going to kick inside. This guy's going to kick inside. And then, I even watched some of his guard stuff. Now, it was 3 years ago. He's gotten a lot better from where he was 3 years ago. But I think the athleticism could even translate better to tackle. I mean, if he gains 20 pounds, different story. Then I think he may hold up better on the interior. But I'm with you. Where right now, I'd rather him face guys that are 260, 250 pounds that are edge rushers versus guys that are going to be 30 pounds heavier than him, on the interior. So I'm with you there. But I do know there's going to be a certain point this summer where we will be talking about, we may be frustrated on where he's being lined up, and because they do this every year with guys. Like, one day he's going to be at tackle, another day he's going to be at guard, another day he's going to be at center, and that's just going to piss people off. That's what they do every year.
And I might complain about that as well because I do want to give him that opportunity. And I get it. Like, I thought how they handled Josh Zuda was poor. I'm not in the building, but you put him at guard. He had some solid tape against Tennessee in his rookie season, and it's like, you know what? I'm going to put him back at tackle.
And then the Philly game, they put him at guard, and I'm like, this guy doesn't look too bad. Has he played guard here before?
And Azudu, like, he has a little bit more to him than a Marcus Mbow. And one of the reasons why, like, I think they might love Mbow and also the idea of Mbow at tackle is because of the feet. And Azudu had similar feet. He was very light on his feet, kicking into space. But, like, tape-wise, Josh Azudu's tape at tackle at UNC was I always felt like he was awkward out there. I appreciated that he was able to kick in. Like, that takes a lot of skill. But his kick slide and his set was always just really awkward to me, whereas Mbow was just boom, 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 smooth. So, like, I don't even see, like, a comparison between those two when it comes to that, other than the fact that they both possess light feet.
All right, 35 minutes in. Let's talk about Abdul Carter besides his number.
Okay.
You're Brian Daboll. Mm-hmm. You got this Swiss Army knife that can line up everywhere.
That's what I'm doing.
How are you using Abdul Carter and I'm saying this, I'm emphasizing, because I have my answer and I have my idea. How are you using Abdul Carter in year one, especially knowing the depth that you have around him and even behind him?
I love this question, and I am using this guy as a defensive weapon. We talk about offensive weapons a lot. This guy's going to be a defensive weapon on passing downs, and he is going to align across the defensive front. And I want to see Shane Bowen get into his bag with alignments and formations. And I want this guy to be a quarterback spy on the Jalen Hurtses and the Washington Daniels. Quarterback, Jaden Daniels. That's what I want to see. I want offensive coordinators and offensive protection packages to have no idea what not number 11, not number 10, not number whatever other retired numbers there are. Abdul Carter. I want them to have no clue where this dude is going to be at all across the formation. A-gap, penetrate. I want simulated pressures where you're sending for. He's dropping into coverage. He's coming the next time. I want Shane Bowen to maximize this. And I am not looking to use Abdul Carter as in a rigid mode. I'm going to get this guy to rush high side often, but I'm also going to get him to be a linebacker sometimes. I'm going to put him in the A gap. He's going to sugar that A gap. He's just going to rush like normally. He's going to slant inside. We know Shane Bowen likes to stunt and slant and twist and do all this, and Abdul Carter is going to be a factor, but I don't want the offense to ever understand or know what his intentions are before every single play. And it's going to make it so difficult to plan for, especially when you got to get two pairs of hands on Dexter Lawrence at all times. Brian Burns is your third rusher if Abdul Carter reaches what we believe he could reach, and Kayvon as well. It's just the ceiling is endless if everyone can stay healthy here. And I just think Abdul Carter could just be that creative piece where it's just like, have fun dealing with this guy out here, whatever number he's wearing.
No, and I love keeping Kayvon around too for that very reason, that it allows you to be more versatile. It allows you to line up Abdul Carter wherever you kind of want. And I am hoping, like I am hoping as a fan, like I think back to JPP in 2011 and like that Dallas game, Sunday Night Football, where he's chasing runs down 40 yards down the field, and he's just playing like a nut. He's playing like an animal. And the nice thing is about those teams, when you think back to 2011 or even especially, more or less 2007, where it was really elite, A guy could make a nice play, make a big play, and then if he needs to come out, he can come out of the game.
Yeah.
You don't need to be in there 80% of the snaps, 75, 90% of the snaps. Now, I think that was one of the biggest detriments of the 2016 Giants, where Olivier Vernon and JPP couldn't afford to check out of the game. Whereas I want Abdul Carter to play like a freak and an animal, and to know that if there's a crazy play that he makes, if he's chasing a run down the field, or if he's chasing a receiver down the field 20, 30, 40 yards down the field, and he makes a play, and then we go, wow, that he, guess what? Check out. Kayvon's going to come in, and you're going to be good in a couple plays or the next series or even the next play. That's what I want Abdul. I want Abdul Carter to be a freak in that regard this year. Not necessarily in the 10 sacks, 20 QB hits, all these pressures department, but lining up everywhere, like you said, and being versatile in that way and just being an overall freak and a game wrecker. That's what I want out of him this year, more than the top-end pass rush stuff, especially when you consider second year playing full-time edge rusher, or this will be his third year. No, his second year playing full-time edge rusher this year with the Giants. All right, past me. Shut up for a second, because this episode is sponsored by SeatGeek. The MLB season is underway, and the NBA and NHL playoffs, they're also underway. And with SeatGeek, the MLB's official ticket marketplace, your tickets are fully guaranteed and instantly fulfilled in your account after purchase. No more waiting on some random dude, random person, waiting to email your tickets. Remove the anxiety. Is my anxiety. Blah. With our partners at SeatGeek, you can now get 10% off any tickets with code GIANTS2025. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and more. I'm thinking about going to the Celtics-Knicks game tonight because driving up to Boston is a lot better than going to MSG. Not to mention, there's tons of concerts and other events too, and each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know if you're getting a good deal. Just look for the green dots, because green means good and red means bad. And you know we came through for you guys. You can use code GIANTS2025 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code GIANTS2025. Back to the interview.
I just want him to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
This guy's just going to be a pain in the ass, and there's going to be a lot of plays and a lot of formations where you're going to use him like a typical edge rusher, going high side with Brian Burns on the other side, with Dexter Lawrence pushing the pocket, and you're going to leverage your strengths and your advantages, but that's not what he has to be limited to. This is was a very creative player. This is like a modern type of weapon, defensive weapon type of guy who can do really a lot of different things for you in coverage and while rushing and slanting and everything. And I just hope Shane Bowen is the guy to actualize all of these moving pieces and get the Giants defense back to the pride that we once had in this unit, and we just have not had in quite a while.
Now, this guy's probably the least talked about draft pick, even though he was 65th pick of the draft. And I think an important pick, Darius Alexander.
Very much so.
Older prospect. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes defensive linemen, like they just need a couple years. I mean, obviously Giants fans point to the example of Dexter Lawrence. I like to point to the example of like Travis Jones was one of my draft crushes a couple years ago out of the University of Connecticut. He's finally kind of getting to a decent spot where, you know, he's having some, you know, good solid production and good impact. So where do you see Darius Alexander kind of, how do you see him evolving? What is his timeline in your head? Because to me, I get a little worried that he's an older prospect. I get a little worried about that he was a late bloomer at a small school like Toledo to begin with, but he dominates the Senior Bowl. He uses his hands well. I think he has good size and measurement to believe that he could be successful in the NFL. So what's kind of like your thinking and timeline of Darius Alexander and when you kind of expect to see, you know, his version of his best ball?
Early in the season. I think we're going to see, his best ball, it will take a little bit to develop, but he can be an impact player for the Giants, I think, early to mid-season, and he'll earn snaps early on to get his feet underneath him. Should see a lot of one-on-ones. I think maybe you start with him in a pass rushing role, but I don't think like he's inept as a run defender, right? But like have him focus on his strengths, really like get him to harness his energy into what this pass rushing package can be. Because, like I said, the upside is just through the roof. And you still have Raheem Nunez-Roches, who is on average to maybe slightly above average run defender who can play on base downs when the Giants are in a 4-man front next to Dexter Lawrence. But by the end of the season, I'm expecting Alexander to assume a lot more snaps than the Raheem Nunez-Rocheses of the world. But the Giants didn't go out and add depth to this defensive line for no reason. Well, they did for insurance, of course, and because we saw what happened last year.
Right.
But they also want to keep these guys fresh. They want to have some defensive packages where I'm sure it's Darius Alexander and maybe Jeremiah Ledbetter or Roy Robertson Harris or DJ Davidson or Nacho, whatever. They want to be able to play defense with Dexter Lawrence off the field. And I think Darius Alexander will be able to allow you to do that better than the Giants did last year. Remember last year before Dexter Lawrence got hurt, he would take like a little breather. He would take a series off, and it was just, we're going to run the football directly.
Oh, you hold your breath. I mean, it's been like that since 2022, where even Wink was here, where anytime he's off the field, or even, it was Leo at the time, you just hold your breath, and you're like, I'm hoping that we do not allow a 10-plus yard run here.
Exactly. So I don't know if Alexander week 1 is that player that you're confident in. I still want to see it, to be honest with you. But eventually, I think he will develop into that player. And then just the upside of him as a pass rusher, just being a gap shooter and a disruptor. It's going to be a pain in the ass for offensive linemen to hit their angles appropriately with the New York Giants, and how the Giants spread you out with the wide 9 and then attack you from angles and force guards to kick way out in the space to cut off an angle of a 4-eye shaded or even a 4-tech shaded Darius Alexander. And that guard knows he's in a one-on-one because Abdul Carter's outside of Darius Alexander. And then at the 1-tech position, you have Dexter Lawrence occupying the center and the other guards. So you have one-on-ones basically in 3 different areas, unless the tight end and the running back stay into chip. So it's a numbers game for the Giants. And the Giants are going to have a lot of those advantages. But if you're using your tight ends and your running backs to chip, you're not using it to help out with Darius Alexander. You're using it to help out with Abdul Carter and Brian Burns, and possibly Dex, who will already have 4 hands on him. So I think Darius is agile enough, physical enough, violent enough, adept with his hands enough to be able to win those one-on-one matchups when he already has the angle advantage.
You mentioned some of the other interior guys they added, Roy Robertson Harris, Jeremiah Ledbetter. They added Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland to the secondary, and I really even mentioned them because I feel like the secondary was one of the reasons why the Giants' run defense over the last couple of years hasn't been great.
True.
We know the interior is a strength. We know Dexter Lawrence is a strength. We even know the linebackers at certain points were a strength. Bobby Okereke, 2 years ago, and even last year, he's not a bad linebacker. But do you think that the Giants have done enough to take their run defense from a spot where it's one of the worst in the league to even at an average point where we're not going to be looking at this defense and being like, damn, we just can't stop the run?
I think I would say they've done enough, but I'm not confident in it. Right. Like I think what they did was appropriate, but one injury, and we're looking at some issues. And that one injury isn't just to Dexter Lawrence. It could be to Bobby Okereke. It could be to Darius Alexander. Like I'm a little nervous about that. I think the Giants did a good job revamping this defense and finding key starters who could be difference-making players for you. But if they suffer one injury at basically any of these positions, that weak link might be inserted. But I'm glad they went out and they got depth guys like Chauncey Golston. Like, oh God, they went out and got Chris Board and Demetrius Flanagan Fowles and some guys just to give you options. And then you also have Deontay Johnson, who they were high on last year before he ended up getting injured. But I'm a little concerned with the lack of top end depth on the defensive line. But again, they have many options. They have like 10, 11 defensive linemen. And I'm a little concerned with the options behind Paulson Adebo and Deontay Banks as well. And I'm not even sure how confident I am in Tay Banks either. I'm hoping, and I believe in his talent. I believe in his athletic ability. But will it all come together? If he becomes demoralized, if he's getting picked on, can he overcome that? I don't know. I just don't know. And then behind those two outside corners, we're looking at a 7th round pick we just took, or Trey Hawkins III. So that's where a lot of my concern lies with the Giants roster and why I'm not over the moon about the defense. But I still think it's like the way I look at it is like what is the defining trait of this defense? It's to rush the passer. So they just need to stop early downs, establish leads offensively. And as long as they can get into that game script, if they can get into that game script, Justin, then you're looking at like an impact defense that NFL analysts are talking about all around the NFL. But if they can't, and it's like last year where it's like they led the league in sacks, but no one was really talking about them, right? Like if they can't, then it's just going to be similar to last year. I think just a better version of that. So it behooves the Giants to just be able to fit the run and get in a second and long, get in a third and long, and just allow Dex, Burns, Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, Chauncey Golston, Darius Alexander to just pin their ears back and go get the quarterback. I just can't wait to see that. I hope it materializes. Can't say I'm 100% fully confident that it will, but I'm slightly optimistic.
Yeah, I want to end off with something a little bit more positive, and I'll do a trivia for you because it was weeks 1 through 12 where those were like when Dexter Lawrence is healthy / when the Giants have a sack rate of over 10%. It's so crazy. They put the quarterback on the ground 1 out of every 10 plays, Nick. Weeks 1 through 12, do you know where they were in EPA per play?
I got to imagine not good.
They were 27th.
Yeah.
You're putting the quarterback on the ground. You're basically ending the drive. Yeah. Sacks are drive killers. They're drive enders. You're putting the quarterback on the ground 1 out of every 10 plays, and you're 27th in EPA per play. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. So I do hope that is their identity this year, but they gotta, as we learned last year, that identity has to be, it has to be joined by other things. Like, yeah, can you make a play on the football in the secondary? Can you force those incompletions? Can you instead of runs being 5, 6, 7 yards, can they be 2, 3, or 4 at best? So that'll be the main thing. Sack rate for the Giants. They were the only team in the NFL through 12 weeks to have over a 10% sack rate. And it would have been like very rare that they would have had like rare air in franchise history with that sack rate if it was 10% in double digits. Do they end the year close to 10% or even clear it?
I think it's certainly a possibility.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a possibility. Yeah. Like looking at it I'm just trying to think of ways where it doesn't work. And a lot of it is just injury related and the things we mentioned before. I think this run defense is going to be better because Javon Holland is an upgrade over Jason Pinnock in the alley. And I think that was a big issue when the Giants did want to go in 2 high shells. Right. So, yeah, dude, I'm excited. I'm excited for the season. And not usually, overly optimistic. I wouldn't say I am right now, Justin, but I'm cautiously.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am cautiously optimistic. Like, I don't think they're going to go out there and set the world on fire. It's a really tough schedule.
Yes.
Blah, 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 blah. But I'm just excited for them to go out there and do it, which I didn't think that I would be there, especially keeping Shane and Daboll.
Yeah.
I didn't think that I would be this excited for them to go out and do whatever they're going to do, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent,
yes.
Which I didn't think I was going to be at this point. So I'm with you on that.
And also they get to play this underdog role, which they did not do at their 2020. What was it? 2023. They did not have that. They just won a playoff game.
Right.
We gave Daniel Jones his contract. Everything crumbled. And then last year it was like, this is the last year of Daboll and Shane. If they suck, they sucked. And they were brought back. And now it seems like there's a lot of positive energy, positive inertia going into this 2025 season with a good draft and a solid offseason.
Russell Wilson's our quarterback.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
That's
and
crazy.
Jameis is the backup.
Jameis Winston's the backup.
I think about
a guy
that
from
too.
Ole Miss. A guy from Ole Miss is the third stringer.
I know. And my cousin
Tommy DeVito may not make the team.
Yeah. Tommy DeVito. Yeah, man.
MetLife will riot.
Tommy Cutlets. I'm glad he capitalized when he did, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for him.
If I'm him, I'm staying on the practice squad because you never know. You never know. Like I guess the last 2 years, he's probably thinking, I'm not getting on the field and I'm not going to see it. You never know. You never know with this team. So if I'm Tommy DeVito, I don't think they're carrying 4 quarterbacks. So I'm sticking on that practice squad because you never know. Nick Falato, thank you so much. Where can we find you? Not that people know where they need to find you, but where can people find you? Thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, well, Justin, thank you so much for having me. You can find me on X at Nick Falato. That is Falato. You can find Dan Schneier and my podcast, Big Blue Banter, anywhere you get podcasts. Find my written work at Big Blue View and Giants Country.
Thank you for coming on, Nick.
Hey, thanks, buddy. A lot of fun. Take care of yourself.
All right, thank you, brother. All right, I want to thank Nick Falato for coming on the show. Only one episode this week, but next week, I think we're going to have two because this schedule comes out next week. So I'm going to do a reaction video once the schedule is finalized. I love schedule release week. It's when I get excited about when am I going to Giants games? How many warm weather games am I going to go to? How many cold weather games am I going to go to? Get to start mapping out the tailgates too, so get excited about that. I want to have those tickets available earlier this year compared to when we had them last year. Tickets went live for tailgates like a couple days before the season last year. And I want to change that because I want you guys to map out when you're going to be coming to MetLife and then when you're going to be hanging out with us at L16. So schedule release next week. Sean Marash said that he really likes the schedule release, so probably you're going to see Sean Marash, my friend from WFAN. So see you next week. Still working on an outro, and I'll see you next week.